So welcome everyone. My name is Shay Sosanya. I'm co-founder and CEO here at Gravity Sketch. We developed Gravity Sketch quite some time ago as we saw a clear need for better communication tools in 3D. We're all thinking in 3D, so why not work in 3D from the onset? So what Gravity Sketch is, and our mission, I guess, is the most important thing here, is to give teams that design the power to communicate ideas spatially. And that can take shape in virtual reality, which is what we're going to focus today on, but it can also take shape in other forms, as you can see. So the idea of creating in real time together in a spatial environment should lead to a far faster communication and transmission of ideas, especially loose wireframe sketches. Like they can tell so much on a piece of paper, and they can tell even more in the 3D environment. But that's not just the only component of what we're building. We're also building Landing Pad, which is the cloud platform that brings it all together. And so you could work across different devices. Everyone could be networked and communicating together, from the iPad to virtual reality to your desktop computer. And we'll talk a little bit more about this towards the end of the webinar and on the things that are to come. But let's talk a little bit about what we're building from a technologies perspective. We're building a real-time geometry engine, which is all of our subdivision, mesh, and NURBS-based geometry, all this happening at 90 frames per second. So immediately as you pull a trigger or as you put the pen to the computer screen or the iPad screen, we're creating geometry in real time. And that's essentially a spline with a mesh attached to it. We try to build this geometry engine as seamlessly as possible, in the sense that it feels like sketching. It doesn't feel like you're doing 3 or 4 click operations. And that brings us to the next pillar, which is the intuitive UX. And then finally, the real-time collaboration is the portion that we're really focused on. We're really clear about what we want to build here. We don't want to build a CAD replacement. We want to honor the craft of sketching. And even further, we want to honor the visualization aspect of the design journey. So being able to concept and see an idea in clay gives you far more information than any sketch does. And so how do we bring those two worlds together in a digital format or digital medium that allows you to accelerate the design journey? So in Gravity Sketch, you can create in 3D from day one. Here's a rough, loose sketch from Scott. And I chose this sketch because I really like how it blends line, surfaces, and even ergonomic constraints all in the same environment at a very early onset part of the design journey. And there's an image somewhere in the back. I don't think it was captured in this particular screenshot here. But further, let's talk a little bit about the workflow. So what we currently are looking at is we're thinking in 3D, then we're jumping to 2D to sketch out our ideas, and then we're jumping back and forth to kind of relate these ideas to ourselves to make sure that we're confident about the design direction. Then we're jumping into CAD. This could be a CAD team, but that's going back and forth as well, trying to really understand what's on paper and what's on the screen. And what's on the screen is really this big. So you're fighting to kind of get an idea. And so you're taking that to core scale clay model or full scale clay model to gain enough conviction, and then scanning it back in and going into CAD. So this takes months, weeks in some companies, and it could be days depending on what teams are working on it, how much energy is put into it. But the ideal workflow would be if we can think in 3D and work directly in 3D. And so you can see these time sinks that we have here in between this kind of back and forth journey with yourself and the back and forth journey with your team. And so what we're trying to build here is a circular journey where you can think and create in 3D from day one using Gravity Sketch. And so the next diagram here, you can see we're thinking in 3D, we're creating a loose sketch in 3D. And because all of the data is applicable to the CAD engine, you could just drag and drop that in and keep moving. And there's a couple of different workflows that you can use in Gravity Sketch to apply this type of workflow. You could work freeform sketching, which you'll see a bit of today. You could sketch over package data. You can bring in an image and trace an image, or you can bring in rough CAD data from another software and then do a design review. So the geometry, we focus on NURBS, and we convert NURBS to a quad-based mesh, which then you can subdivide. So you can work purely in NURBS, you can work purely in mesh, or you can work purely in sub D, or you can have a combination of all of them together. But all the data is transferable into the CAD package. So if you export as OBJ, FBX, IGES file, you can bring all that in and continue your design journey. To get involved with Gravity Sketch, it's really simple. We're going to focus a lot on VR today, but you can use our iPad application, or you can buy yourself an Oculus Quest. The barrier to entry has never been lower to virtual reality. So everything works within the headset. You get pretty much the whole of the application. There's a couple of things that are missing, like shadows and things like this, which we can touch on later. But other than that, you have the full power of the Creation Suite right there at your fingertips for $300, and the application costs nothing on the store. We monetize through our enterprise deals. So I want to now welcome Scott to the stage, and we can kind of get into some of the questions we have lined up to get this webinar going.
Cool. Thanks, Shay. Thanks everybody for joining us today. This is so I just saw a question go by earlier about, why did we decide to do this webinar? And honestly, the reason why is because I really like Gravity Sketch, and everything I've sort of like really gravitated to that I think is important for the community to start to know about. I've throughout my career been, sort of proactively sharing with the community, and I think this is one of those things. And we're at a point where the tool is sophisticated enough now and fun to use, and the barrier to entry with a VR headset is not, it's half the price of an iPad, for instance. So I think that was why. And I reached out to Shay and said, hey, I've been using Gravity Sketch. I really love it. If I can be of help. And so we, over the summer, have been putting together this webinar to figure out how we can, help accelerate and make people in our community, our industrial design and entertainment design and transportation and product, all those related design fields, where we always communicate things into a final 3D form factor. How can we start to accelerate that and show people the magic in effectively, spatial modeling with stereo vision and parallax and that sort of thing. And unfortunately today, in a flat screen viewing environment, you're not going to get the parallax shifting. But I would say number one thing, even if you don't go buy a headset, but somebody who has one, or there's one at your company or your school, just put it on. Open a Gravity Sketch model, of which I'm going to share quite a few today with the community, and have a look. And once you do that, then you'll understand the power of stereo vision in VR. So that was kind of the quick summary of the why. So
yeah, I wanted.
Anything else you want me to add, Shay?
Yeah, I just wanted to learn about the how did you find this? I know that we had reached out to you as soon as I saw you do like your first thing. That was like, I think that's Gravity Sketch. I pinged you on IG, and it was, it was just crickets. And so I don't really know exactly how you discovered it. I mean, I know now that we've had a bit of a discussion about it, but I think that was really an important part, is like how you found it, and how what did you expect going into the software?
I will say that the reason it was crickets is because I was working somewhere full-time and was not allowed to say that I worked there. And I was not allowed to basically do any more social media or workshops or consulting or anything. So I was on complete social media lockdown for the last 3.5 years. And that's why I sort of disappeared from everywhere. But in May that changed. And I'm sort of back to my doing books and workshops and, things like that. But I had seen John Park and James Robbins using it. And they kept telling me, I was watching what they were doing, seeing some Instagram posts, and especially James Robbins is sort of like my mentor on sub-D modeling in VR, right? He's the one, who helped me get into it in a sort of more finished level of modeling. And I just saw that he was having too much fun, right? I was like, what are you doing? Because he had an early collab room that he invited me into. So I had seen that actually quite a while ago. And I was like, what are you doing? And the, the ability to place points in space, right? Very intuitively is like hands down one of the coolest things ever. And so I was like, okay, this really is the future of this sort of visualization. And so I should learn this. And so it was really a desire to sort of stay relevant in regards to what are the new tools. I love creativity tools. I love researching those subjects and then doing a deep dive. And then I like to take them and sort of try to break them, the tools, and figure out other ways to use them. And so that sort of led into a deeper dive into Gravity Sketch. But all the time, I'd say with James mentoring me on, bothering him about topology questions. So
Yeah, yeah. If those of you that don't know James Robbins, you could find him online. His YouTube channel has helped a lot of people in their early stages of development with Gravity Sketch. He's an
yeah, his
automotive
YouTube channel's great.
transportation designer. Yeah,
Yep.
amazing guy, super nice, really active part of the community. I
Mhm.
also want to ask when, like, it's a two-part question. So when was this? Because you've been silent for quite some time. And
Yeah.
how long did it take until you felt competent to start sharing or even just start using this in pipeline?
Um, I think probably I have about, I don't know, I have a couple of years now in Gravity Sketch, maybe 2.5-ish.
Right.
And, it took me probably, it took me only an afternoon to see the potential, but then it took me probably a couple of weeks to build the muscle memory of the buttons, right?
Mm,
So it's a new UI if you're, coming from flat CAD keyboard and mouse environment, or coming from a sketchpad pencil environment. It lives somewhere in the middle of those. And so, it took me a little while to get some muscle memory, but once I started getting some muscle memory, then once I had that, then I immediately started to create content.
mm.
So,
Yeah, that's great. And so would you say like your onboarding was relatively like self-driven? I know that James helped you a lot in the topology side of things, but the biggest question we get from the community is like, or even customers, it's like, how long is it going to take us to get
oh,
up to speed with this thing?
yeah, I would say having learned, I don't know, I've learned like 10 different programs in the last few years. Gravity Sketch was probably one of the easiest, and in
Oh,
fact, I would say that across the board, that all the VR programs I've learned have been across the board the easiest ones to learn,
uh,
as compared to how much stuff and content is in something, even something like Photoshop. It's like you can go so deep, right? But in something like Modo or Maya or those sorts of programs, they're excellent further downstream,
mm,
but they're very deep. And to turn them into a simplified tool that you use takes a long time to figure out, oh, I only need to know these things.
mm,
Whereas you jump into Gravity Sketch and it has only those things, right?
mm,
It doesn't have all the deeper layers of like everything is, one menu, two menus deep.
right.
And that's all there is. And so I
Yeah.
love it for that because it's closer to a ballpoint pen and a piece of paper, right? And so in that regard, I think it's simpler and faster to learn the architecture.
That's like so awesome to hear because when we started developing, what we wanted to focus on was the first mile of the design journey. We always saw like these 3D programs are always focused on the last mile, essentially. How
Mm,
do you get something to render or something to actually mill? But what about just getting something from the page or from the screen into 3D? And that's why we've curated the tool set in such a way. And we do want to eat away a little bit more and make more powerful tools. Like, don't get me wrong, but just giving like those key ingredients to be fluid, to be gestural, to be expressive in 3D is like that's what we think the formula for success is.
yeah,
Um,
I agree.
and I've noticed that we didn't really introduce you, like we didn't really talk about your background, who you are. I don't know if there's people on the call who I'm just taking for granted that everyone knows who you are, but
Well,
potentially there's people that don't know who you are.
yeah, we have sort of a short period of time, and I didn't really want to dwell on that stuff. So,
Right.
I mean, you can go to my YouTube channel or just type my name in and find of my website, or my Instagram is where the most sort of recent work shows up all the time. So, let's just find the info
Yeah,
there.
that's
I've
perfect.
been at it for 30 years now, and so, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to get into the Gravity Sketch part and show people the magic of VR.
Cool. So we're 15 minutes in. We have plenty of time to jump into that portion now. I want to frame the question that I've had going in my mind since we first talked. And you said something to me on our first call, which was that working and sketching in 3D improved your 2D sketching, or it
Yeah,
could improve the 2D journey. And I really want to blow that up in this webinar. I want to really discuss that. I want to show how you see that and how you've been using that and utilizing that process.
yeah, it's a bit of an abstract concept, right? That working in a 3D program could help your 2D drawing. But I have learned that even in Modo, right, and doing flat screen CAD work for many years, that still helped me to pre-visualize a three-dimensional model, right? So the more you look at a model tumbling in space, right, the easier it is to sort of call that back in your memory and be able to draw from that experience on a flat plane. What I found in Gravity Sketch that was different was that when I place points in space on a flat CAD program, I have to usually go to multiple views, right? So I'm usually looking like top view, side view, front view, or rear, and aligning those points in space, because I really don't have any idea where they are. If I'm in a 3/4 perspective view, I can't just grab a point and move it with confidence that it's going somewhere that I want it to go. I have to pull back out to the draft views, right? And do singular movements at one at a time and switch from screen to screen. And, it's just super slow. And after a while, it becomes really tedious, not very much fun. And so when I jumped into Gravity Sketch and I started drawing, one, I found that it was like the most natural thing for me, because thank you for setting up Gravity Sketch, which was built pretty much the same way I draw, which was, XYZ sections, and working, and then with the magic of being able to just align your hands and constrain your movements, XYZ. That's what I do when I draw and I move points in space. I have to plot lines to move XYZ, right? And I find those points, then I connect them with a curve in space. Well, in this case, I can move the XYZ if I want to constrain a motion of a vertex. And we'll talk about, and we'll demo that today, about how you influence and modify lines that you've drawn with constraints. But also, I could just now in VR with stereo vision and parallax shifting, I could actually just place that point from the beginning where I wanted it to go. And I would be pretty damn close to like where I wanted that point in space to be. And that for me was like, that's the big jump. So as you start to build those kinds of curves and you're getting automatic symmetry in space, you're training your brain to see these mirrored curves in space, right? And you will make a little mental jump and you will start to connect that back to the way that you draw. And you will have a better understanding effectively of the anatomy of a line. And that, I think, is the key, is that the anatomy of the lines that you draw in your wireframe effectively, which is your sketch, right? That is at the core of defining all of the proportions, and the initial design, spark or impression of an object. And so that, the more effort you put into getting those things right at the beginning, the faster all the rest of it falls into place. And so I found it was really about observing, building lines, appreciating the line a little bit more than I had. That I definitely don't appreciate the line in a flat CAD program as much, but on paper, I do appreciate the quality of the line, the gesture, the balance, the proportions, and then being able to take that same thing, an appreciation for a line and its balance and proportion and thick to thin, all those things I can now do in effectively, a beginner CAD program. That's pretty awesome. So I'm effectively seeing a thick to thin gestural drawing in 3D space. That is new. That is different. That is not flat screen CAD work.
And what I went to the Royal College of Art, and I studied innovation design engineering. This was the thesis between me and my co-founder. But we would spend a lot of time with automotive. They were just one floor below us, and they would do these little welded wireframe maquettes. And what you just said is like, it's like reminiscent so much of what we saw when they were making these little like spot welded maquette things. They would do this like in Freeform. They wouldn't sketch. They would just go down, take a bit of wire and just start bending and spot welding it on the spot to get a loose structure that they then could sketch as a reference. And what you just said, like, just clicked to me. That's exactly what they were doing, was that form finding.
Yeah. And I think if you have that knowledge about that type of drawing ability, right, of how to draw in perspective, basically, I mean, section drawing has been around for forever in perspective drawing. And so if you already have that knowledge, it directly carries over super fast into Gravity Sketch. And so that's something you can be quite good at in the first day you're using Gravity Sketch, right, is drawing in space. And but if you don't have the knowledge of how to build with sections, it's going to be difficult. I won't say difficult, it's going to be harder. Like the learning curve is going to be a little steeper. It's going to take a little longer. But if you already know how to define volumes and surfaces with lines, right, in space, then this is like a supernatural progression to jump into this app.
We should go into the app on the back of this. Let's go ahead and get started. We have Emil in the call, and Nico, I believe, both on the Gravity Sketch side of things. Some of them will be handling some questions in the comments, and another will be presenting the screen. So we'll see Gravity Sketch in real time. I think Scott's also going to jump into Gravity Sketch. Yep. So you guys keep filling us up with questions. I think Scott has a pretty clear path of what he's going to break down for us. But as we said at the top of the meeting, for those of you who didn't join, we're collecting all the questions. Scott will be making a YouTube video on the back of this, and he'll be posting on his YouTube channel. We'll post it on ours as well. And we will also have this recording out for everyone quite shortly after we complete. And if there is appetite, if there's a lot of engagement on YouTube comments and the comments here, potentially we'll do another one. We'll just focus on some specific workflow tips and tricks that Scott has.
Okay, so let me jump into the.
And Scott, you're using the Rift S, is that right? Tether.
Yeah, I'm using it. Yeah, and I'm happy to answer questions and talk about headsets. I've pretty much tried almost all of them. But yes, I have a Rift S. That's what I use as my primary headset. I prefer that because of the weight is lighter. Even though it's lower res than a Quest 2, I do prefer the feel of it. And in fact, my favorite headset was the original Rift, which is even lighter and more comfortable. So
I love the original Rift. Yeah, super light.
Yeah, it's so light, so comfortable. But you know, that res was almost a little bit too low res to really appreciate what you were building. So yeah, let me just double check all that.
So we got you up on full screen now. Emil is driving, guys. So Emil will be driving the view. We may be able to jump into Scott's view at some point, but we're going to focus. I was looking at Scott at third person. We're using Landing Pad Collab. I touched on this a little bit in the beginning of this webinar. We have some exciting news about this at the end of the webinar as well. But this is essentially a shared co-working space where they have all the access to the Gravity Sketch creation tools at the same time, and they could pass geometry back and forth and work in unison.
Emil, can you see my menu? When I pull this up, I'm holding it just in front of the side of the car. Perfect. Okay, cool. So let me just talk a little bit about environment setup. I usually almost always work in a seated position. And the reason for this is that the hand skills that you have in your sketching ability and line quality will carry over to the quality of your lines in Gravity Sketch. I would say for sure they're easier because you can edit them and manipulate them after the fact, but still there is a level of handcrafted quality that comes through in a Gravity Sketch model. And so in order to do that, I found whenever I stand that my head movement will drift relative to the controllers, and the drifting causes me point placement problems. So when I want to start doing more precise things, I sit down. I almost entirely work with vertical locked, because to do long sessions throughout the day, I found having vertical axis locked. And what I mean by that is that, right, if it's not locked, then the model will tumble. So I almost always have that locked. Of course, I have mirroring turned on almost all the time. You've got a couple of different mirror settings. If you want to see the mirror surface ghosted or not, I usually just leave it off. And then for workspace, I tend to use the custom, and I tend to do the HDR on, but I use a gradient. And the reason for that is that I want to set, I'm going to turn on actually the stage floor here so we get a cast shadow on the ground plane. Is that if I'm using the stage floor, which auto sizes to the model, I tend to go to a white floor so that it kind of looks like the reflection. Hang on, let me just make this side body reflective. Let's make it a little bit darker so we can see that working. So you see the underside of this looks like it's reflecting a white ground. So it's a way of sort of tricking your brain into thinking it's not really reflecting this stage floor ground where the shadow is. It's actually reflecting what's straight down in your HDR gradation. And that is actually white. So I sort of made that match. That sort of tricks your brain a little bit. Okay, so I tend to do the 3-color. A lot of times, actually, I'll do a black horizon here, which is counterintuitive to setting up a natural world. But when I get in here and I start looking at the reflections that are created, the black line and the contrast shows up. So what you really want to try to do is you want to set up contrast in your gradation. If you're trying to do your final surfacing, you'll start to see all the plane changes quite visibly. And it works well. The other trick I do sometimes, if I just want to look at the reflective form, is I'll grab the light and I'll flip it upside down and put it under the stage floor. And now I won't have the light trying to mix across the reflective surface. And so that's a way that I can start to see only the reflections. And this model, by the way, is not one that I would say is tight by any means. It's sort of a work in progress. I'll bring back the light. So right now the light doesn't have other controls other than position. Hopefully, Shay, someday we'll get some lighting controls on, the softness.
It's on our hit list. Definitely on our hit list.
I'm going to move this back to yellow now, and I don't have this yellow in this color palette yet. Oh, I do. So I can just pick it, hit the color wheel, pick the yellow. This is your new clay shader, by the way. Shay, I like it quite a bit. It's nice, especially in rougher models. It makes the model look a lot better than it is. So, all right, let's jump into the drawing component. So that's sort of my basic setup on environments. I don't do a lot more than that, but I'd say that vertical lock is key if you have any sort of motion sickness. For sure, leave that on. You'll be much better. Also, if you have, I find actually I get no motion sickness in Gravity Sketch as compared to like a gaming app. I'll get sick immediately. And the reason for that is that I control the camera, right? Right now, Emil is showing you the feed, but when you're in first person view, nothing moves in this scene unless I tell it to move. And so that actually keeps you locked to the world. And then staying vertical is also very helpful. But I find whenever you lose camera control is when you get sick. And there are unexpected movements that happen. That's when you start to feel ill. But in this case, only things move when I want them to. And that it feels just rock solid. Okay, let's go to layers. I've activated these layers. I'm now going to go backwards and let's turn off these layers. That's Emil's layer. Leave that alone. Okay, so I think that when you move into any 3D modeling program, what I did there is I just moved the sketch over to the centerline plane and it auto snaps to the plane. I imported it through using reference images. You could import things. Let's just grab this one. There's a sketch. Okay, and right, I could have imported this one and see what I get close to the center line. It auto snaps. Okay. Let me just kill that.
Sounds like there's a bit of desire to watch things from your perspective. Not sure how disruptive that's going to be if you wanted to share screen, or Jaren, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, but I'm on my PC. It's not going to.
Okay.
And then the Zoom is through my Mac. So.
Right. Okay.
Either Emil can just kind of follow me around over my shoulder, or I will be doing a YouTube video that I record on my machine that will be all in my first person view. So don't be stressed out if you're missing these steps. I'm going to redo them all basically per the questions that you guys are writing right now. So let's turn this off for a moment. Let me just add a new layer. Okay. And what I tend to work from, and see how loose the sketch is. I did this on my YouTube channel live and it was, a 5-minute sketch or something, but that's enough actually to jump into Gravity Sketch. And you can also free sketch, of course, in Gravity Sketch with the ink tool. I know this is one of James's favorites, but I tend not to use it very much because I still like to, traditionally draw, but you can do whatever you want to do here. And you get auto symmetry, etc. All these lines you can edit. But I always find they have a few too many points for me. And also, I think I'm faster in Gravity Sketch if I enter Gravity Sketch or any 3D program with intent, because I'm definitely going to do this stage within that sketch. But here's the thing I find. When I'm doing this sketch with traditional media, I can draw it very small. Okay. And when it's small, I can see the entire proportion of the shape all in one go. All right. If I come into Gravity Sketch and I try to do the same thing and I want to get far away from it so it's tiny, right? Then I can't manipulate the curves because I can't see the points. I don't have the resolution to manipulate and modify the line drawing and see it tiny at the same time. But when I'm working on a piece of paper and I do a thumbnail sketch, it's much easier for me to see the entire volume and proportion of the object in one go. And I still have super high resolution, right? Because it's the real world and it's a nice pen on a piece of paper. And so I find that there's a very large advantage to working traditionally to plan your first steps in VR. And so here I've established a proportion. And now in this case, I don't know really anything else about this car. But it has incredibly short overhangs, like no overhangs, and that's going to be a real challenge in 3D. So the way I usually start is I go to my pen tool. I use the point mode. I'm going to draw without end caps. I'm just really trying to emulate let's pick a brighter color. I'm trying to emulate basically just a ballpoint pen final sketch. So the first thing I'll do is take, 15 or 20 minutes and just put in some points and draw the side view that we have. It's all we have so far. And I'm going to make these lines purposely a little bit thicker than normal. Maybe the center line's out there somewhere. In fact, let's not put it out there. So you can see I can just grab a line and get rid of it. There's my center line here. And I put as few lines as possible. A lot of times I just draw with these straight lines, like so. Okay, and then I know this is going to continue down here somewhere. Probably need a bit more overhang. I already know that. In order to get any curvature in top view, I'm going to need some overhang. Put these guys in here.
And Scott, right now you're just tracing that vehicle, aren't you?
Yeah.
With mirror turned on.
It's not a slow process, right? I mean, I can do a finished wireframe usually in about 45 minutes to an hour. And that's not just the side view, that's the entire 3D wireframe. So let's say that I've got that, I've got this design line here, like so, got this one here. I'm not going to get into the specifics of how you end a line and stop. Those are the button controls for this demo. A lot of that stuff, Emil and Jaron and team have done a really great set of tutorials on the YouTube channel that have these great little short tutorials to tell you how to do all that stuff. Let's see. Okay, so we're there. So I might do that first. Now the next step would be I get right into the package. So I like to blend, let's say the rough loose sketch, which came from traditional media. I've laid out some lines that I'm now going to manipulate and pull them into 3D space. But I also like that when I pull those into 3D space, I want to have some real constraints. Like I don't want to mess around and if I know it has to have 4 wheels, right? And I'm going to have to deal with clearing the wheel for the body side. It's like, well, just get the wheel in there from the beginning. I mean, I don't want to mess around and not address that from the very start. So a lot of times I'll add some components. Let's make the reference a little transparent so we can see through. So I'll add some wheels. You can use the tape measure. This is a very small car, by the way. So you can see here, it's only about just over 60 inches wide. hopefully that's still on the list. Shay is adjusting those, giving me all millimeters or all inches only.
Yes, yes. Like document units.
Yeah, just like, oh, cool. So we'll be able to change that from the beginning. So this super short wheelbase of like what, 84, 85 inches. Super tiny little car. And now to make sure that that's correct, then I'm going to bring the interior. And let's just move this guy out of the way so we can see. I have a pair of seats, which I have loaded as a prefab. I have a person there. I've positioned them. I have a little mocked up steering wheel, a little mocked up IP, firewall through here. Well, firewall's up there, but I have a bulkhead through here and a dash, which was for this car specifically. But if I get rid of both of those things, this is what I would bring out of my prefab library. No sense in building it again. You can then position, you can grab multiple objects together. And here you see I'm constraining just on the vertical axis, right, to change the position. Or if I line my controllers like this, I can move them forward and back, right? I can move them wider if I want to give a little more shoulder space between. So I'll usually do that actually right at the beginning, as soon as I've got the line drawing in there. And you'll see in my line drawing, it actually has a little, where the dash is, where the steering wheel is, where the seat is. So I try to follow that, and it's all pretty much lining up. So this is, I think, the area that pays real dividends later. When you're working and doing sub-D models, you don't want to have to redo a whole bunch of surfaces because your package was wrong from the beginning. So I think the more time you spend in doing the setup, it's effectively just building the foundation, right? And so when you build the foundation, it's just going to all align and be simpler to deal with later. So I think it's time well spent. Okay, what about this thing? So what we'll do now is we will lock the reference layer, and we're going to lock the wheels. And that means I can just go in here, use a big selection sphere, and just grab the line drawing and move it off of the center line. Okay, so I'll do that once again. Just going to grab all this, and I'm going to move it. And then if I press my index finger on my dominant hand, it's going to make a copy. So there I've now moved, kept my center line, moved out to the side. Okay, now what we can do is take any of the lines that are for the side only and delete them off the center line. Right, so pretty much all of these, right? We only need that. We don't need this. Yeah, we could use that. We don't need any of this information. Don't really need any of that. All the rest of this is for this carries over to the center line. That carries over. Okay, that's fine. Now, if you want to get this more aligned on center, you can grab any line and then just move the point in space. And this is where you can now manipulate your lines, and they will auto snap to the center line. And you'll see that little red line pop up, I think. Emil can see that. But I'm constraining this in only moving in width off of the center line. So I'm basically snapping two curves right on top of each other. Okay, now we're going to move out here into the side plane. I probably should have snapped that first and then copied it out, because you can see it's all wiggly in top view, right? Because I was just quickly placing it on center line. No big deal. We're going to move all these points anyway, so it doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is that we've constrained our side view now off of the reference plane, and we want to pull it into space. So I'll start with, let's see, that's the center line. So that could go away. That could go away. Might still need that one out here. And let's see. Yeah, that works. Let's start with the window line. So I'm going to click it. Then I have these controls. I can see that it's mirrored. It's a round cross section. You can make it a square or a diamond shape. You can change the size of it here if you want to slide and change the size. I tend to work, I'm going to keep these a little bit large, but I tend to work as small as possible because I like the precision. And so now what I'm going to do, in fact, let me turn back on my interior so I can see where my people are at. So I see where that person's head is. And so I'll say, well, all of these are going to start to come over here. I want to do I want to do a lot of tumble home, a lot of side window angle here. And so I start to manipulate these, but when I'm manipulating them, you'll see I'm only moving them in one axis. And this is exactly the same way that I draw. And so this became super intuitive for me to work this way. And all I have to do is align my controllers and get that constraint line. It automatically pops up and I can just slide these. Now, the reason I do that is that I'm ensuring that the side view is what I wanted it to be. And the side view isn't going to change at all, right? Because I haven't moved this line up or down. I've only moved it in and out. And that is just super intuitive. And as soon as you see that, it's, oh, well, now I can move the vertical over here. Let's change the stroke size. Okay. Oh, these guys move over to there somewhere, that sort of thing. You could pick these, and if I can't change stroke size all at once, but I don't really need them. I'm going to turn on the more finished one here in a minute. Okay, then what I do is I start going back to the center line, and let's do these in a different color so that you'll see the width lines are added. 3 points make a curve, 2 points are a straight line. If you want tangency across the center line, you need to go here and pull this forward and look at it from the top. But see how fast that is? Because all I have to do is just move my head and look down, right? And now I'm able to get the tangency. And if I want to get it tangent in the front, just edit and go to the front view, right? And say, oh, it's a little bit too high here. I'm not going to be a nice tangency across the center line. And that's as fast as it is to align that. But I'm looking multiple views sort of simultaneously. And it's just awesome. And then let's pull this one over, the base of the pillar, maybe in here somewhere. Let's reduce the size a little. Let's pull these points over. I usually pull a group because I know they're all going to be sort of near each other. And then you can go here, and now we can go to the dead top view. It's a pretty active, VR modeling is actually quite active. You're like moving your arms a lot. You're looking down, up, left, right. But I don't have any trouble staying in it for a long time. I can definitely do a 6 or 7 hour day. And see how the base of the pillar is here, so I move the red line over. Okay, and then this one's got to come out of here somewhere, and then maybe I'm going to put a little break, and then it's going to go like that. Maybe I'll have a similar line down below. So I'm just going to copy it and bring it forward. So maybe those are 2 key lines I want to experiment with there. Let's see. Let's see. I'm just trying to think how many more I want to do here before I turn on the full wireframe. Let's do one across the back. Turns out that's pretty straight. Now, I will say I don't tend to start making a lot of changes at this point. What I try to do is prove out that the initial sketch has potential or was faulted. We'll say I don't know if it's faulted. It just wasn't, as refined as I may like. And so what I tend to do is give the sketch a chance, basically. See what you can find in it first that you like before you automatically start making changes to it. And the reason for that is that one of the ways to work fast in any 3D program is to be decisive. When you're not decisive and you start to do lots of Command Z because you're working in the computer and you can easily do a Command Z, you can burn a whole day so easily and have nothing. So I think one of the best ways to work in any 3D or any computer application is actually to be decisive. This wasn't very well done from the side view, so I'm just going to tweak that a little bit. Now you'll see there that I just did some very small movements, and you held my controllers together. I got a vertical constraint again, so I'm only moving vertically, but you'll see the movements are very small, right? Up and down. And that starts to be the precision from years of drawing 2D that carries over into 3D wireframe drawing. Okay, now I'm going to move this I'm probably going, I know I'm going way too fast, but we don't have a lot of time today. I want to just this is like an intro level, like what can the tool do kind of demo. Any questions?
Yeah, there's quite a few. You answered a lot of them. I'm just kind of reading through the chat now. It seems
Yeah.
that the next webinar we need to do your point of view. That's one of the overarching
Okay, yeah, I mean,
things here.
don't worry about it. We will. And not a problem. So don't worry if you're not seeing it from my point of view or not entirely getting it. I just want to we wanted to give an overview of the way that you can use the tools, and really talk about drawing in VR space. But this is a really fun experience to twist this and see something in stereo vision. And effectively, this is like old school wireframe buck building, right? That you would then later load clay onto, or you would bang aluminum panels around and hit your section lines. I will say that dropping a section line into this is super easy. We'll put a planar constraint on a line. I'm going to snap it to my XYZ grid, and we'll come in here.
There's a question I found really interesting here around the relationship to having fun in a tool, and how that's connected to the final output.
Yeah, so one, I think that this is super fun to do it in VR, and it's new and it's fresh and it feels more interesting than the CAD flat environment. And what I would say is that as a result, I've created things in VR that I don't think I would have ever modeled on a flat screen. And the reason for that is because just for me to do that without the surfaces existing in a flat CAD program, to my knowledge, actually doesn't exist easily or as much fun as I just did. And now I can start to manipulate this and put a little, curvature through there. I can start to even play with the radius that's going to be through here.
Do you ever work with other perspectives than just the side view?
It depends on the object. So I would say I work with whatever's the most, the view that gives me the most knowledge about the object itself. And so if in the case of a car, it's a side view. In something else, it may be a top view, right? Or front view if I'm working on front view graphics a lot. But vehicle stuff tends to be side view is the most convenient. And the reason for that is twofold. One, we get a lot of information out of the side view, but two, it's faster to draw because you basically are just doing a draft view and you can indicate the perspective a little bit in one point. You just offset the wheels and a pillar and the seat backs, something like that. But so it's fast and efficient to do views that communicate the most that you don't have to fully construct in perspective. And then of course, that sketch over there, the reference one, doesn't give me any information about the front graphics of this design. And that's where I'm actually just drawing all of this inside Gravity Sketch. And that's where it's turn off the planar constraint, where you can start to draw. Let's say I just start to indicate, well, would it be cool to have a vent intake out here? And you need 3 points, by the way, to do a tight radius, 2 points to do a soft radius. And if you come back up and double click, it'll close the loop. So you might just start to play around with shapes floating in space. And then of course you can manipulate those and you can change the shapes. And I'm not even thinking about the surfaces in between. I'm just thinking about the overall graphics. It's like, well, yeah, I kind of want this intake somewhere out over here. And then I think it's going to go back into there somewhere. So I'm going to just grab it. I'm going to scale it. I'm going to copy it. All right. And so now I've just copied that one in there. Maybe it's brake cooling or something. Who knows? And then if we want to get into surfacing, of course, then it's just as simple as go to a full curve, flatten it, full curve, and then select that one and select that one, and then done.
Nice.
So there's the channel.
Scott, do you ever just freestyle sketch without an image? I mean, this is kind of this freestyle mode, but do you ever start like that?
Yeah, sometimes. sometimes. But even then, when I freestyle, it'll be on a separate layer, and I'll use the ink tool and scruff around and find shapes. I have a kind of an interesting way to do that that's a little bit different when I'm doing freeform, and I'll show you a little like behind the scenes kind of thing. Okay, I just grabbed a shape that was grabbed from a rendering of mine, and it's like think of it as a Photoshop custom brush. If you make them white on a transparent background and save them as a PNG, you can then bring them into Gravity Sketch, and they will keep the transparency that you set up with the transparent background. Okay, so when I'm really freeforming and doing super abstract, I may not even be drawing anymore. I might be just using surfaces like so, and putting a surface in space like that. Let's do something really simple. It's just a NURBS surface. Okay, now if it's a NURBS surface, I can apply a texture to it. And the texture I want to apply is this guy that I just brought in. And so I'm going to, let's see, does it show up for me already? Yeah, okay. So used to be you had to unlock it once you brought it in. Hit the color wheel. There it is. It shows up as a material. So now I've just applied that shape to this surface, and it brings all the transparency with it. Now Emil's taking over my part. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to play around with, see, Unity doesn't like it when you cross over so much, but I can start to play around with this shape. All right. And then because it's white, you can change the color of it in Gravity Sketch after the fact. If it's black, you can't make it lighter. You can, so I would advise making them white and then assigning a color after. But now I can start to take this and I can manipulate these points. I can twist this plane. Okay, now I can start to double them up. And so you'll see sometimes the view works, sometimes it doesn't. They cross each other out a little bit in the way the Unity likes to render the transparency. Doesn't like transparency on top of transparency that much, but this is a way I've done some design work. And then what I do after this is if I stack up a bunch of these, then I combine it back with the lines. So now I go back here, and then I would start to pull, let's say I had a bunch of these. Oh, sorry, I'm still applying that texture. So I want to pick a different solid value here to draw with. Now I can change its color. Okay, and so I would come in here, and then I would start to pull a more finished shape that was maybe inspired by the stamp or the Photoshop brush. It's like custom shapes in Photoshop, but it's custom shapes in Gravity Sketch. But you can take all your custom shapes out of Photoshop and bring them into Gravity Sketch. So the things you're used to doing in a 2D program, you can now start to do in 3D space. And then I won't use this later. This just goes away, but it helped me find some key lines here that I may not have had the muscle memory or the forethought to draw, but I made fun discoveries using this abstract method. That's a little more advanced than a little bit abstract, I know, not straight up sort of, modeling in space. What are we at on our time? We're already burned through our hour, 5 minutes to go. You want to do a little, any questions? Oh, I should turn on some surfacing. So we can leave that section on, it's fine. Okay, so reference, let me just get rid of that for now. Interior is on, wheels are on. I usually bring in a standing person as well for 1-to-1 scale. That helps me get a feel for really how small is this object relative. I always like to do everything in human scale. I think human scale is definitely the way to work. And relating anything you're building, whether it's an environment, a piece of furniture, a vehicle in this case, consumer product, anything, you have hands here, you've got a full figure. This figure is fully posable. right? So first you're going to see that and you can say, that's not fully posable. I'm only doing these big gross movements. Well, you have to right click your joystick, and now I can get individual joint control, right? And I can start to manipulate all of those positions independently. Okay, so that's something I usually always have as a standing figure or seated, whatever is appropriate. These are just some little mirror shapes. I put these hoops on this. I don't know why. I was trying to do a car that was actually good for, you know, it's a bit like a shoe, a bit like a product, a bit like a car. So I was doing some more mechanical bits and pieces. Those are little sub D shapes. Here's all the body surfaces. Not all of them, some of them. Here's the glass. And let's leave it a little transparent. It's very nice in Gravity Sketch. You can play with transparency and opacity. Here's the doors with cut lines. Somehow
And
this
Scott, do you want to highlight a little bit about where this goes after this? Like, where are we going after you finish your Gravity Sketch model? What's the next link in your pipeline?
For me, it is usually export as an OBJ. So let me just turn off that line drawing because now it's changed quite a bit. I will say that, okay, so if we're talking broad pipeline, the next thing I would do, if this is what I liked, I turned off my line drawing, it will export whatever you see in the scene. Okay, so you can still keep your layers here. This line drawing can still be here. I've just hidden it. It's not going to export unless it's turned on. So my next step, aside from just saving it, which is the little floppy there, you hit the export button. And right now I've just been using the standard OBJ export with all the defaults set. So I export it here. You could save it to the cloud, to your landing pad, or I could save it on my local drive, like so. I export that as an OBJ, and then I open it. For me, I use Modo a lot, but you could put it into any sub-D modeling program. You'll get a control mesh. I think there is a way, you were telling me, Shay, that you can.
Yeah, so in the settings, you can go,
options.
yeah, in advanced options, you can do the
Yeah.
control mesh. Yeah.
So the default is set to control, which means this is going to be faceted. I should show what that looks like. So if I grab this mesh, right now it's full sub D, the highest resolution. Lower resolution is here, but here it is off. And so you'll see in the low poly mode. And I should say I do almost all my modeling in the low poly mode. And I only do the final surface adjustments in the high sub D mode. One, it's hard on the compute to work in sub D mode. Also, I find it very difficult to connect points in space with the curved organic looking mesh, always updating. I'd like to see like really rock solid placement of points. And to check it in the final, you just grab it to edit, and then you click that on and off. Now, one of the superpowers of sub-D modeling, or VR, I should say, is scale. So if I want to work on a corner somewhere, right, I can zoom all the way into that corner. So Emil will have to zoom in with me. But you can see that, you know, now I could start to just manipulate the really small movements of a surface, right? And oh yeah, that one's a little too low relative to this one, right? And I'm moving them with confidence in space, right? Without having to go to a top view or a side view or a front view to manipulate and move those points. Oh, there's a little hollow through here. Let's make that let's make this radius a little bit tighter. So I just move those a little bit closer. And if we zoom out, you'll see what I was working on. I'm only working on this tiny corner, but it's so easy to do. It's so easy to get in there and control the radius and the curvature across the surface. You'll see I'm even doing my cut lines in Modo as well. So there, all you do is you make a traditional edge loop and you delete the surface, and now you have a gap. Controlling the radiuses all through here, so you can see it all. This is in its highest sub-D mode. And this is not a car that I would say is done by any means. I'd say this is, you know, the end of one, let's call it a day and a half of work to go from the line sketch to the 3D wireframe to the surfaces. I can definitely do the line drawing and the base surfaces of all the panels within one day. And then it's going to take, you know, 70% of your time to finish the last 30% of the details. So, which is typical of doing finished work. But anyway, to wrap up, I go into Modo, I assign the shaders, the material in Modo, and then I usually go export that into Octane, and I do my fast renderings in Octane because I can do GPU rendering, and it's my preferred rendering program. But I can set up all my scene setup happens in Modo. All I need to do here is the polygroup assignments, and a lot of times every panel will just be a different color. So that I know that they're separated, because when they come into Modo, it will remember all my polygroup assignments for the materials, which makes it really easy for me to select the mesh component pieces if they're all matching in color. All right, I think I've already gone over, but happy to say one
Yeah.
and see if there's
So,
any immediate questions.
yeah, I want to there's a few questions, but I just wanted to reiterate that we're capturing all the questions in this webinar, and then Scott's going to make a YouTube video that's much more tutorial style. I know that a lot of you guys in the chat have been asking for more like of a tutorial-like kind of experience. Scott will be doing that and posting it on his YouTube and our YouTube channels respectively. What I would say is that we probably want to wrap up. I know a lot of you all have meetings to jump into, or the next part of your day to start. So we're gonna thank Scott for his time, and we're gonna come back to you guys. It seems like there's a lot of interest in maybe even a webinar just on surfacing potentially. So
yeah, I will say, Shay, on that front to everyone that, I will do it. We'll either do another webinar, or I'll definitely record a video to my YouTube that address a lot of your questions. But a lot of the things at the base level of how to use Gravity Sketch are already online, right? I mean, the tutorials are really nice inside here. I can go here, and there's just at the very bottom where the little graduation hat is, look at all these tutorials. There's tons of tutorials in here on skills, exercises, workflows, all that sort of thing. So I would say go do those first. That's what I did. I did all of those tutorials first to learn on my own. Then I went to James with questions, because I didn't want to ask him things that are basically already there for me. Even within the app, it's already there. And then James has a great YouTube channel. And of course, I will answer questions to get you guys going more in this. But overall, I just like to say that it is a bit transformative and super fun. And be careful, it's a little bit addictive to start building models this way. And just be forewarned that modeling becomes a really joyful process, and you will make lots and lots of discoveries by starting to see your surfaces and visualizing your shapes this way. Not to mention the fact you can go into something 1-to-1 scale, right, and check your sight lines, all that sort of thing. Won't work from my view, but Emil can go in there now.
I just want to ask one final question. This is a question I always ask, and that is, do you have any just broad advice, Scott, for designers, young designers, students out there, wanting to be a professional in the industry, whether it's automotive design, industrial design, concept art? Is there any, nugget of wisdom that you'd like to give?
Well, I don't know if it's a nugget, but I think when in the learning process, try not to, you always will, but try not to put undue constraints on the quality of the thing you're creating while also trying to learn a new tool set. So what I mean is, be a little kind to yourself. And when you pick up Gravity Sketch and first use it, or you first use any program for that matter, or you're working in the shop, you're working with clay, you're learning how to draw traditionally, anytime you're learning any new skill set, cut yourself a little slack, right? It is new, it's going to take time. And one of the worst things you can do is put undue constraints on the quality expectation while at the same time trying to learn how to use the tools, right? And so I would say, be patient, but determined, and sort of allow yourself the time and space to fail and learn before expecting mastery of any skill set.
Yeah, great piece of advice. Well, thank you, awesome, Scott. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone as well. I just want to touch on the community aspect. Thank you guys so much. We honestly couldn't do and wouldn't do what we're doing right now if it wasn't for you guys who have joined like many years ago, and Scott was one of them, where we're just kind of finding our way in this space and have a very ambitious goal of helping to bring a more fluid design experience to that first mile, as I mentioned, of the design journey. A couple of really cool updates coming up for us. We will be launching this collaboration or collab experience that you're seeing right now for free to all free users. It's a little bit different from the business version, but you will have these core features that you're seeing right now, Scott and Emil exploring. So you'll be able to join your colleagues or your students, or present your work to your peers within the virtual reality environment, and that should be coming before the year's up. So stay tuned to that. And a few more updates to the software as usual, bringing some pretty powerful new tools on the horizon. Just to mention again, we've collected all the questions from Scott today, or that have been asked to Scott today, and we're going to give those to Scott. He's going to make a video in first person view, so POV, as everyone's asking, around how he gets started in Gravity Sketch and his pipeline, his journey, and some of the tips and tricks that he's found. And I know you wanted to turn that around relatively quick, Scott, so we should be.
Yeah, I should. I'm trying to do it this week.
Awesome.
Maybe by end of weekend, I should be able to get it posted up. So I think
we're gonna
still have enough of a gap. So
fantastic, and we're gonna liaison with the community and everyone that's attending here via the email sign up that you guys made. So everyone that's on who has signed up for this will receive an email, a follow-up email with some of Scott's models. We have some amazing models that he's given us, the native Gravity Sketch models. If you do want them in OBJ or FBX file format, if you don't have Gravity Sketch, we can provide that as well. And then you'd be able to kind of explore those and see those for yourself.
Yeah, that's how I learned from James all about the topology. Is he shared a really tight model with me that he had done of one of my designs. We collaborated, and then I could study the topology. I was like, oh, I don't have enough resolution there to make that curve, right? Or I have too many edges here and it's causing a little kink in this nice smooth surface, right? So
Right.
It's all really about controlling that. And I think looking at the topology is very helpful. And so that's, the OBJ, FBX, I don't know if they should preserve the quads, I think.
Yeah, the quads will come through. Yeah,
quads will be preserved, which is cool. And
Scott,
that yellow car, I'm giving that away. I'm giving away another car that's even tighter, just to show a really tight car, a motorcycle, and 2 boats. So there should be 5 models eventually, probably by the end of the week.
Yeah, and these are amazing. I've seen them. They're so cool. Sorry, Jaron.
Yeah, I just want to mention we got those 2 boats and the motorcycle in the gallery. If you all want to go ahead and check those out, if you have Gravity Sketch, you can go check them out now.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I will say the 2 boats are very fast and almost entirely NURBS. They're going to play really well on a Quest 2 because they're super light models, but they're very rough. There's only a couple of sub D panels in there. The motorcycle is the opposite. The motorcycle is like pretty tight, but lots of sub D, lots of quads. So that's going to lag a little unless you link it to your PC. Or if you're already in a Rift, you'll be fine.
Cool. Well, yeah, those models. So there's a few models that are available right now for you guys. We're going to be adding more. Scott, are there any updates on your side? Just as we're closing it up, what are you doing personally? Anything you want to share with the?
Well, personally, right now, I guess I'm technically unemployed, which is why we're doing this webinar. One of the reasons right now, which is awesome, and I'm enjoying it, taking some time off. But I'm still have a bunch of projects going, so starting to ramp back up on new books. But primarily over the summer, I've been doing a vehicle with Crypto Motors. So we've been working on a digital NFT car asset, and so we're almost done with that. Actually, I built the whole thing in Gravity Sketch. We will promote and show the case study of that entire project, but that's going to be probably coming in the next 45 days. I think we're getting into animation now and final presentation of it, but we're at the sort of color and graphics part. The model's frozen and done, so that'll be fun and interesting to do and see how people use that in the metaverse. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone on the call. Thank you, especially Scott, for this time. You've given us far more than we've requested from you. Good 45 minutes over. And Jaron, thanks again for hosting that Q&A session. Yeah, we're looking forward to syncing again, Scott. We should definitely do this again. I think that the
Yeah, super
involvement
fun. It just
engagement
like
is
flew by because once I get rambling, it's just like blah.
good. Yeah,
It's like when I get on a development call with you guys, right? Then it's just like
yeah,
flood you guys with tons of feature requests, et cetera. But you guys have been amazing to work with, I will say, and super responsive and adding those snapping features and all that. The tool's getting better and better. And in all transparency, Shay isn't paying me to say this. I'm only offered up my time because I really love the tool. And I want to help advance the creativity of our community. And so that's the motivation behind our collaboration.
absolutely. And for us as well, like we're offering this tool for free, and we charge organizations. That's how we make money. The idea is that you guys can use this and fold into the pipeline and how you work, and find new pathways and design. Myself as a former designer, I know how painful it is to push and pull vertices behind 4 windows in the CAD software. It's not fun at all.
I almost can't do it anymore. I start to try to move it in space in the perspective view, and it's like, where did it go? And then I gotta go to this view and then that view, and then I'm bored, and I'm like, I'm not going to stick with it, and so I'm not getting the same modeling results. Definitely, the Gravity Sketch models are better than I can model on a flat screen. They have gesture and character and some handcrafted look to them that I just can't get the other way. So.
Right. Well, please keep giving us insight and feature requests, Scott, and same to the community. This is the only way to make the product better. At this stage, we really do rely on your guys' feedback and use of the tool. Yeah, I just want to thank you one last time and thank everyone. It's been an amazing session, super eye-opening for me. I know we had several calls, but I learned a lot of new things in this call. Yeah, so thanks a lot. And
I just saw a couple, one last question that was good.
Oh,
you guys
yeah,
have
sure.
Discord, right?
We do have a Discord. Yeah, we do have a
go.
Discord.
So,
it's been posted a few times. It is on our website at the very bottom of the website. You just scroll down gravitysketch.com. You'll find our Discord. Please join there. The Discord is unique because you talk directly to myself, our CTO, and majority of our engineers and designers. So you talk to the people that are building the product.
Yep. So that's the way to communicate as an audience, and help influence the tools.
Yeah, and go follow Scott on Instagram. He's probably the best Instagram page we follow right now. So
thank you.
Cool.
I did. I paid him $1 for that. So.
Yeah. All righty. Well, take care, everyone. We'll see you again.
Everybody.
We'll do this again soon.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.